these entrepreneurs keep coming back to us, keep proving us wrong, and uh, keep that messaging alive that, there is, even if I spend the next 10 years being an angel investor full time, there's no, it's not, I'll constantly be learning.
Hey guys, welcome to Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and today the guest that we have on the show is Prakhar. He's an angel investor, and he's also one of the lead investors at AngelList here in India. So Prakhar, because you're the only angel investor that we've had on the show, or the first angel investor that we've had on the show, I should say, I'm curious to know, how does one even become an angel?
Well, it's not that difficult to become an angel, because at the end of the day, to become an angel investor, all you need is a little bit of awareness of this asset class and a little bit of comfort in this asset class, and basically money to deploy in this asset class. So it's really not that difficult to become an angel investor, especially in today's scenario when, startups have become the buzzword, and there's so much awareness and there's so much media attention around, all these companies that are going on raising funding. And a lot of them have given very successful exits for the angel investors as well. What is key is, how do you become a good angel investor? So becoming an angel investor is not that difficult. Platforms like AngelList, there are others as well that are there that, empower people who want an exposure to angel investments. So it's really not that difficult. I mean, AngelList, I would say, shameless plug, but should be the go-to platform for anyone who's looking to, start angel investing. I think it's the best platform in the world, the largest in the world, and, fairly active in India since the last 2 years now. And yeah.
So the next question that I have for you, there's obviously a difference between angels and good angels and even star angels. Right. But how did you become an angel? And then what is the journey for you been like, being an angel investor?
So for me, I, by education, have been a finance expert. So for me, the aspiration was always to join, let's say, the investment banking world or the management consulting world, through to my education. And then from there, probably as the normal career trajectory moves, join the private equity world, etc. But after I finished my master's, I did a 6-month internship in Mumbai, and that's where I was, I came back to India after, 2 years of doing my master's abroad, and I was just thrown into the startup ecosystem and just met so many people from the startup ecosystem that, I was so excited by that entire ecosystem that I realized that, hey, I doubt I can go back to the corporate world or, to that very strict, stringent sort of a work environment. And so that was my entry into the startup ecosystem. How did I become an angel investor? It's been a slow process for me, because I've been, let's say, a part of the ecosystem for the last 5 or 6 years now, but I have only become active in angel investing, let's say, for the last 2 years. So just to give you a sense, in the first 3 years of me being involved in the ecosystem, I must have done like 2 angel investments. And in the last 2 years odd, I've done about 13, 14 angel investments. So the pace of angel investing has really picked up, I'd say, in the last 2 years. And the factor for that is, I think, everyone who decides to take because this is such a high risk asset class, anyone who's deploying funds into this asset class should take the time to understand the finer nuances of deploying funds, because it's not just about, hearing a good pitch and deciding that, hey, this is an idea that I want to back. There are so many different aspects that you need to be aware of. The competitive landscape, the founder's profile. Are they the right people to back? Are they going to stick it out? Because a startup journey is one of the toughest journeys that an entrepreneur can take. So are they the right people to back? And then just the entire ecosystem, because when you are investing into a company, even though it might be a great idea, but is it actually venture investable? Is it a business that can scale to a point that can give you an exit as an angel investor? So those are the things that I think, over time, your judgment gets better. So I took my time with it. I have become fairly active in the last 2 years now, even though, in the entire journey, I have closed, I would say, over 100 investments that I've been part of as a part of the organizations that I was representing. But personally, I have become active in the last 2 years.
Gotcha. So as I was saying at the beginning of the video, you're the first angel investor that we've had on the show. Most of the people that come on the show are entrepreneurs, and typically they're younger entrepreneurs, maybe they're first or second time entrepreneurs. But the story is always very similar, right? They start with almost no understanding of how to run a company, right? And then over time, they make a lot of mistakes, they learn a lot of things, and then they reach that point. So hearing your journey as an angel investor, it sounds like there's some parallels, right? Where you started slow, you started kind of like, okay, I'm not really sure how to do this, even though your background was in finance. And then, over time, you've become a bit more confident.
I have been lucky and privileged, I would say, because I have had this, let's say, window to the world of angel investing, wherein I had access to a lot of deals, access to a lot of data, and I have had a chance to learn from other people's mistakes. So deals in my initial first years that used to really get me excited, the first time I used to hear a 2-minute elevator pitch from an entrepreneur. In hindsight, when I think back at them, and a lot of those companies actually did end up getting funded as well, but have not ended up being as successful. And now with all my learnings of these past years, I can actually see that why even at that time they weren't good bets. So I think that judgment gets built over time, especially when there is, let's say, limitation of capital, because angel investors are typically deploying funds from their own savings. So you have to be very judicious of how you deploy the limited funds that you have. And you're not only competing within angel investments, you're also competing with other asset classes, because there's the equity markets, there's the debt markets, there's the mutual funds market, which are all which all have a capability of giving you decent returns. So for you to take a decision that, hey, a portion of my savings are going to go into angel investing, you need to be fairly comfortable with that asset class.
So at what point did you start? Because angel investing sounds like when I imagine it, you're sort of like you're alone, right? You're investing as a individual, right? But then you're working with AngelList. So when did that happen?
Right. So it's been about, we are 1 month short of completing 2 years of launching the investment space, what you call syndicates, with an AngelList lingo in India. The way it came about is, so even before me, my colleague Utsav, who heads AngelList in India, he was the one responsible for bringing syndicates to India. He did his entire research of, the model that we follow in the US called the syndicates, which is, setting up these pop-up SPVs, special purpose vehicles, for an individual investment, wherein, a bunch of people can club their capital together, and instead of having, let's say, 20 different individuals on a company's cap table investing individually and then subscribing to the shares individually, and then all the regulatory hassles that come with it, this SPV structure allows for, let's say, these 20 individuals to combine the capital into a single vehicle, and then that vehicle invests into the company. So for the startup, it becomes extremely streamlined in terms of the formalities, in terms of regulations, etc. So that is the model that we pioneered in the US, and which we brought to India. Obviously, it had to be customized to India to fit the Indian regulations, because in India, again, SEBI regulates, angel investing, etc. So we are set up as an angel fund in India. That's the regulations that we follow. But again, it's a similar model of us setting up these pop-up SPVs, sorry, wherein we pool capital. So even though like you rightly mentioned, angel investors are typically taking their own individual calls of investing into these companies. And that's the good part about angel investing, that you can, take your own call. So you have only yourself to blame if the bet goes right or wrong. But at the same time, this SPV structure allows me to capture more capital from my own network. It could be people that I've worked with in the past, friends, family, whoever, sort of is comfortable with my decision making. is comfortable with my judgment and my knowledge of this asset class and believes that I have the requisite knowledge to, to ascertain whether this is investable or not. So they piggy bank on my judgment, and again, we follow the SPV model. So we are able to, let's say, together as a cohesive group, write, let's say, a larger amount of investment into a company. So that is the model that we have, let's say, pioneered in India. And we have just recently, I think last month, we announced that we've completed 100 investments in India in less than 2 years. So I think it took us a year and 10 months to get there. And I think by the time we close 2 years officially within India, I think we'll have done about 120 investments. I think that's what it's looking like at the moment.
Yeah, this is what I've heard, that you guys are investing like crazy. Like, what is it? One or two every?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I would have to say, I think we're averaging about 2 investments a week at the moment.
Amazing, amazing. And nobody else is doing that, right?
Yeah, I would imagine not, right? Because so it's not like, there have been other platforms, etc., that bring angels together as a platform to invest. But I think for them, they've all taken, let's say, 8 years, 10 years plus to build a portfolio of 100 companies plus. Whereas, the technology layer, because we as AngelList consider ourselves as a software player for technology player for the venture capital industry. So it is that technology layer which has been able to take out so many redundant tasks of investing for us, deal discovery, deal invites, paperwork, signatures. So many tasks are automated on the platform that the work really reduces, and we're really able to, let's say, make the pace of investing a lot quicker. So I would say yes, that should make us the most active investor in the country at the moment.
I was gonna ask before you said that, like, is this something that, because I think looking from the outside, if you don't know about this layer of technology, you're probably just thinking, oh, these guys they're moving too quickly, they're taking risks, it's all gonna fall apart. But I think you're basically you're entrepreneurs in a way,
right?
Right?
Yeah, exactly. We completely work like a startup. So we are, even though we are investors, we ourselves are backed by some of the best people in the venture capital industry. So we've raised, as AngelList India, ourselves, we've raised some capital from global funds. So we completely work like a startup. We think like a startup, both in terms of budgets, in terms of, the people that we hire. Everyone needs to have that ownership mindset that we talk about. And and to answer your question, that yes, to the outside world, it might seem risky that we are chasing the numbers, but I can tell you, if I had to advise anyone in a completely unbiased way as well, I can tell you just the sheer quality of deals that we have done on AngelList, I think sets us apart. So we are not chasing the number of investments. For us, the primary goal always has been to chase the quality of investments. And the fact that we have been able to marry the two, quality of investments plus the quantity of investments, I think is our forte, which will make us, let's say, outshine the others.
Okay, so that's a little bit about AngelList and how you guys have been able to accomplish so much in the last less than 2 years now. But I'm also curious to know, because our audience primarily consists of budding or wannabe entrepreneurs, are there any sort of trends that you've seen? I mean, you've been a part of so many different investments, right? And good investments, bad investments. You've also probably been in the room when the investors say, "Listen, this isn't going to happen." So, like, what are some trends that you've seen and things that you've noticed over the years as an angel?
So I think the one common thread that differentiates, let's say, the good entrepreneurs from the bad is, I would say, persistence. So the ones, and even today, let's say, having been a part of this ecosystem for 5 years, I don't think there's any single person who can claim that, in your first meeting, when you meet a startup, that you can pinpoint and say that, yes, this will be an absolute success. You can have a gut feeling. You can have, let's say, you can attach a probability to it that, hey, I'm 80% confident, 90% confident, fairly confident that this will be a success, but no one can with 100% certainty say that this will be a successful investment for me. And just, an entrepreneur's journey is just so lonely at times, because I mean, he has to deal with the investors, he has to deal with the customers, he has to deal with his own teammates. There are so many things that he has to juggle, the regulations, the accounting, and especially in your early days of a startup journey when, most entrepreneurs are bootstrapped and they don't have that access to capital, and that's why they don't have, this huge team that takes care of all these functions. So it's really the persistence that I think differentiates the entrepreneurs who are able to stick it out. There are also instances where you could have started with a not so well polished idea. I won't say a bad idea, like a idea that's not so well polished, but with persistence, I think you can pivot, you can change, you can learn over time what's working, what's not working, and keep, let's say, cutting out the flab and keep, retaining the good parts and moving forward to, refine the final product, which, you find works for you. So I would say that the common thread that I've found that has worked best in all these companies that I've met has been persistence. And then there are obviously bunch of other factors that come into it, like regulations, your government support, etc. Just the timing. There are so many startups that I meet that, let's say, were taking a crack at e-commerce before e-commerce became mainstream. So there's also has to be a timing element, I believe, wherein the entire ecosystem needs to, be working. The timing of that entire operation needs to be right to make it a success as well. But yeah, so that has been, and then I think we as angel investors slash venture capitalists get the best access because we interact with so many entrepreneurs. So you get to learn from the good and the bad from all. So you get to learn what worked in some cases that you can probably yourself learn and be able to impart on someone else. And then you can also learn, you also get to learn what didn't work for a particular company, and that is also learning that you can impart on the other company. So I think over time, you yourself are able to sort of, live your pseudo entrepreneurial journey through other entrepreneurs being an angel investor. So I think that has been the most, let's say, the fulfilling part of it.
Definitely. I've tasted that as well. I mean, I interview so many different entrepreneurs, and so I'm not necessarily an entrepreneur
the
myself.
amount of data that, because I have seen a bunch of interviews, and just the kind of small things that they talk about, and especially when they're talking about their early days, the growth hacks, the marketing hacks, the hacks to hire the right people, etc. There's so much learning that you can take up from all these guys, because these are all, let's say, successful people running successful businesses. So yes, I would assume that, you've done so many videos. There's so much data you have yourself that you can learn from.
Yeah. I have one last question for you. And it just sort of came into my mind. How much of investing would you say comes down to gut feeling?
Yeah.
And how much of it is, I'm sure other people have asked this question before, but how much of it is gut and how much of it is, analysis and statistics and all these things?
Venture capitalists also tend to go through what we call analysis paralysis. So what that means is that if you overanalyze something, you inevitably end up finding the faults, which
Yeah, I'm sure that, even me sitting across from entrepreneurs, hearing their stories, we've had a couple of very early stage startup entrepreneurs on the show where, their idea hasn't even really, they haven't even built their product necessarily. Maybe they're still in the prototype stage. And I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like, yeah, but it's not really going to work, is it? Like, it doesn't sound like, but then you actually look at the person, you look at the entrepreneur, you see how much persistence or perseverance or passion they have. And I think that, that it's analysis versus the actual sort of character of the person who's, founding this startup, right?
And this ecosystem, I would say, is full of these surprises. Like even today, I know for a fact within AngelList, we have invested in a few companies that we had rejected 3 years ago. And we have obviously invested in them at a much higher price than what we could have entered into the company 3 years ago. But at that point of time, again, like I mentioned, because at that point of time, maybe our judgment wasn't right, maybe the business in its form at that moment wasn't right for us. But again, full credit to the entrepreneur for having stuck it out, having proved us wrong. And this happens so often in the ecosystem, and which comes which enables us to learn, more importantly, because we all have our inherent biases. There are so many of them, again, when you're dealing with limited capital. But these entrepreneurs keep coming back to us, keep proving us wrong, and keep that messaging alive that there is, even if I spend the next 10 years being an angel investor full time, there's no, it's not, I'll constantly be learning, because there's so much to learn from these entrepreneurs, and most often what you yourself thought may not be right as well. So that's the best part of it.
Sure. So would it be safe to say then that maybe it's a 50-50 thing?
Oh yes, 100%. So I would say, so again, so definitely, if in your initial 1 or 2 meetings, if the meeting with the entrepreneur doesn't excite you, the idea doesn't excite you, the space doesn't excite you, then I think you should definitely rely on your gut and not invest, especially because the risk of the asset is so high that in case things go wrong, you will be a little too hard on yourself as well, because you'll start thinking that anyway I wasn't comfortable, and then for whatever reason I still went ahead with the investment. So always I would say be comfortable in your choice of investing. Analysis, a basic level of analysis is always required, because you obviously need to know what the competitive landscape looks like. You obviously need to be comfortable with the business model of the company. You obviously need to be comfortable with the unit economics, with the financial situation. You always need to be comfortable with the regulatory landscape under which the company will be operating, and whether that is friendly for the founder and what he's trying to do or not. But beyond that, don't start digging up such small issues which the founder over time will be able to weed out from the business and make it, let's say, a better form of what it is currently.
Definitely. Well, I thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Sharing all this wisdom. It's definitely exciting to have someone like you on the show and hearing the insights that you have to share as an angel.
No, it's been very exciting for me as well, and all the videos that I've seen so far, I'm glad I got to firstly learn a lot from them, and more importantly, I hope now we can have more people from the community, from the investor community, come and share their experiences as well. So then you have a holistic channel covering entrepreneurs, investors, ecosystem builders. So
exactly, yeah. So that's part of my plan. Like I said, you're the first, but hopefully not the last.
100%.
And if you guys want to see more content like this, VCs, angels, people in the investment or VC ecosystem coming on the show and sharing some of their insights and their wisdom, would love it if you could leave a comment and let me know that. And also, if you know of anybody that you think would be interested in watching this, would love it if you could share it with them. Thanks so much for watching this episode. And again, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes,
Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree.